Great. So welcome everybody. Does anyone, first of all, has everyone been through some of the lessons that I've put out, the first 3 that are up there? If anyone's got any questions about that, the last one we did was all about gear. We just talked about picking drums, picking cymbals, getting sounds. As it turns out, for that lesson, I did I did a whole thing in my DAW as well. I did a whole thing where I went through all my sounds and compression, and the lesson just got like over an hour long. And I was like, this is too much. So I took that out. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take that and make that a bonus inside of my app because it was really cool. But it's like a 20-minute thing just by itself, talking about getting sounds inside of your computer. Angelo, I know that's something you've asked about in the past. It's, getting drum sounds and doing that kind of thing. So definitely something I'm going to pop into the app. But does anybody have any questions about any of this before we just jump in? If anyone's got anything, feel free to raise your hand, chime in. If there's anything you want me to answer about that. And it's actually good that we have Dorothea on the call because I had a couple of people I was talking to on social, they were private messaging me, said they went through the lesson on gear, but they were very curious about the endorsement thing, how you work with brands and how I do all that stuff. And that's something I didn't really touch on in this latest lesson that I did. And Dorothy, I know you're navigating those waters now. I'm sure you're kind of in there. I know my philosophy on it. So it'd be interesting to get like someone that's seasoned and has been in that world for a while, but yeah, so I definitely want to talk a little bit about that. But again, if anyone's got any questions about any of this stuff, the main topic is the gear lesson, but we could go all the way back and talk about anything you guys want. So who wants to chime in first? Angelo, you're always good. You start. What do you have? Any questions?
Questions? I've got 1,000. Okay. First of all, I always like to throw the cat in amongst the pigeons, and in some aspects of your comments, I tend not to agree. Okay. In that. Yes, I think from a practice point of view, you can literally play on anything, as we all know. But I still believe if people are obviously interested in gear, is that they buy the best that they can afford. I really feel that if you can afford it, buy it. If you can't afford it, buy the best you can. My father always used to say, oh no, you can't have that yet until we buy the best. I thought, well, maybe not quite the best will be okay. No, save your money, we'll get the best.
I'll be right back. I can tell you this.
So the question is,
go ahead.
I was surprised that you've gone to those heads.
The Evans?
No, not the Evans. I love Evans, but why the Ambassador coated heads?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Why coated as opposed to clear heads? You're saying in general?
Yeah.
It's a personal thing. For me, the coated heads, just like putting anything on a head, like right now we have these sticky hands kind of on there just to muffle it, like the moon gel or any kind of, a coated head is going to give a little bit more of a less resonant sound. And one challenge that I have with maple drums, these are all maple, is that when you tune them up, they tend to really resonate, which it could be nice like in a live room, but when you're recording, it could be a mess. The coated heads are a little drier than the clear heads. So it depends on really what kind of sound you want. It's subtle, but if you put like a clear Ambassador or something like, I'm using a G12 here or G2, they're going to be a little more resonant. So if you want more of that open sound, it's a preference thing. From the jazz school, jazz drummers usually tend to use coated heads. And that also comes back to like brushes. So if you're playing with brushes, the coated head works with brushes where a clear head doesn't. Does that make sense, Angelo, what I was talking about as far as the clear versus coated? It's mostly a preference thing. I don't know. It depends. I'm used to coated heads. I don't love clear heads. It's almost like the same thing with sticks. You like a certain brand of sticks. Does that mean that one's better than the other? Go ahead, Dorothea. You got something?
I just think that the clear heads are warmer sounding.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
And the coated are a little crisper, and they're wonderful for jazz And I play a lot of like big choirs that perform for the 4th of July and for Christmas and Easter and all. And I've tried both heads for that particular venue, and the coated just sounds so much prettier than the clear.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And in the studio too. There's definitely been times in the studio where, you know, a clear head was the way to go on the toms. It depends on the kit too. Sometimes the kit,
it does.
You know, the kit likes it better. And honestly, in terms of drum sounds, I'm not the best guy to go to. Angelo could attest to that. You know, I am definitely not an engineer when it comes to this stuff. I'm still very much learning how to get my own drum sounds. I've kind of always been spoiled my whole life having somebody else get my sounds. So it's only been since I've been doing social media that I've been really trying to do that. Dorothea, you get great drum sounds. I don't know what you're doing, but your drum sounds are incredible on all your videos. So
Tamburo drums.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. Which is going to bring us back to the endorsement thing. I definitely want to talk about that with you. Good thing we have Graham all the way in, all the way down. Where are you again, Graham?
I'm in North Rhine-Westphalia. And you can do that better than I can, actually. So yes, I'm in NRW, Germany. Yeah, I'm in Germany, and yeah, it's we're approaching 20 past 1 in the morning. So yeah,
it's pretty late for you. God bless you for coming in and doing. Do you have anything that you want to add about gear, Graham? Because I know you're a gear guy too.
Oh yeah, I have really bad gas. Yes, so. Gear acquisition syndrome, very bad. Yeah, I think we all do. Like, you know, like Tommy Igo wrote recently, you know, oh, there's a snare you want. Oh, I just bought it anyway. So that kind of thing happens to us all. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Meinl, but just because I like the cymbals, I like their gear, it works for me. But you know, there's a lot of good companies out there all doing great stuff. I use Evans. I think Evans coated heads are some of the best. I used to use Remo. They're great as well. So there's loads of good gear out there. Just pick what works for you and just test it all. That's the most important thing I would say, is just test it out, see what you like the sound of, what works.
That's why it's great to go to the drum shows and to like the NAMM shows and things like that, because you really are exposed to a lot of different things. Like, and you could test them right next to each other, which is always kind of nice. And for me, it's like, you know, the Evans next to the Remo. I do love Remo heads. I mean, I've always played Evans. I got in with them a long time ago from Long Island. The Dario is right around the block from where I grew up. So, you know, I kind of got in with that whole crew when I was a little bit younger. But I've always loved Remo heads as well. You know, there's been sessions that I've been on where like the producer would only use Remo heads, and it's like it can only be Remo ambassadors, coated ambassadors. That's all he'll use. But yeah, no, agreed. I gotta say, for the bass drum, the Evans EMAD that's got that thing built into it is like, oh man, that thing, you could put that on any drum and it turns it into a cannon. It's unbelievable. I also like a bass drum that sings a little bit. I know I get a little bit of flack on the internet sometimes because I like a bass drum to be resonant. Where a lot of people like that slap or that smack. I like a little bit of a tone. It could be the jazz, you know, cat in me from, you know, liking the small drums. But again, it's personal preference without a doubt. Floyd, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, g'day. Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Just trying out the microphone. Sorry, I'm at work here in Australia. It's pretty early. One thing I wanted to say about the gear and the cymbals especially, I was told a trick. If you go to a drum shop, ask them if they're trying to move on anything to make room for some new stock. And often what they'll have is some of the higher end gear, especially the cymbals, they might even have them around half price. So you can get something really good quality and you don't really have to spend so much.
That's a great tip. That's actually a great tip. And that's funny that you say that, because the last time I bought a ride cymbal, I was actually going to the store because I really wanted a Constantinople. I wanted a Zildjian Constantinople. I wanted a bigger ride. I was looking for a 21 or 22. And they had them at this store that I went to. It was in New York City. And, but none of them sounded great. And they were super expensive. They're like $800 or something for each cymbal. They were $799 or something. And I was talking to the gentleman behind the counter, and he said, "Are you married to Zildjian? Does it have to be Zildjian?" I said, no, I want it to feel great. I said the Constantinople's feel great when I played swing, and I need a good jazz cymbal, but I need something with a bell. I have a flat ride. I need something with a bell. And he's like, I'm going to go downstairs and bring something up. And he went downstairs, and it was a Sabian HH, which I never really played too much. 20 inch, a little smaller than I wanted. But he's like, check out this cymbal. And I put it on. I mean, it crashed great. The meat is great. The bell was perfect. He's like, yeah. And he's like, because they're just not moving, he's like, it's half the price of the Constantinople. He's like, these are like $320 or something for this cymbal. And I was like, okay. And I bought that. And that was my ride cymbal for like the last time I bought a ride cymbal until I got this one, you know? So, and that kind of like started me going towards Sabian. Then I turned around and I got this one. I kept on getting Sabians, kept on popping up in my, in my collection, you know? But yeah, no, that's a great, and for anybody watching, you know, keep that in mind, because cymbal gear is expensive. You know, I can't get over how much a set of double pedals are. Spoiler alert, I'm terrible with gear. I'm not really a great guy with new gear. My pedals are ancient. They are probably, I think I bought them in the 90s, and it's the same pedals, and I keep on oiling them and replacing the chains and doing all that kind of stuff to keep them alive. But they are not good. These are not good pedals. They're kind of horrible. And that's because I'm stubborn. I won't spend $1,200 on a set of double pedals. I won't. I can't do it, you know? But I mean, I understand that there's top of the line stuff, and I just don't understand why the markup on some of the stuff is so crazy, especially things like cymbals. But I don't know. If anyone else has got a question about that stuff. Glenn, what do you got? Glenn Dalek.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everybody. Graham, I'm not too far behind your age. I was on with you. I remember what you said the other day. Since everybody's talking about gear and heads, I didn't want to spend a fortune trying all the different heads. And I don't bash gear, so heads last a long time for me, except on snare drums. And I grew up using Remo, but now I'm strictly using Evans. And after watching, there's a 20-minute video on YouTube. Somebody, probably the Portsmouth Drum Shop in New Hampshire, did it. They go through 55 snare heads in about a 20-minute video, half a minute each head. And after watching that 3 times in a row, the 2 best heads I found on a snare drum is the Evans HD Dry. And I'm not even remember. I think it's a single ply, not the Genera Dry. It's almost too thin and too sensitive.
That's what I use.
Evans HD.
Yeah.
Yeah, Evans HD Dry. And I have a favorite. It's not on my drum now, but I got a couple of spares of it. It'll be the next one that goes on the snare. It's a clear coated head.
Interesting.
The Evans EC2. I guess the 2 means it's a 2-ply. It's an EC2 reverse dot. It has that fancy, shiny little multicolor pattern in the center of it, but it's a 2-ply clear coated head, and it is so far one of the best I've ever used.
I've definitely seen those. I've definitely seen those, the reverse dot heads. I have a couple of friends that swear by those. You know,
if you want something more sensitive, go with the HD Dry. As far as the toms go, I'm using Evans' version of a Remo pinstripe.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of it. I think it's just called the Evans EC2, and I got the same head on the kick as you, Jay, that EMAD.
Right.
It's not as good as I thought it would be when I took it home, and it's all fancy looking, all that stuff built in, and I got it on my drum. I wish my kick was a little more thuddy. Maybe I'll throw a pillow.
Yeah, you see, because that's preference. Yeah, that's a preference thing. I like my kit to be not so thuddy, you know, but I want it to be big.
And what I would really like to replace is my kick drum pedal. Now I'm using a really good pedal, a Tama Speed Cobra. It's, I think now in the store, it's close to $250 pedal. But the pedals I'm looking at, like, what did you say? You saw a double pedal for $1,200.
Yeah, I forget.
That's crazy, right? I'm looking at single kicks, and they're like tell me you've heard of these brands. Trick? You ever hear of Trick Hardware?
Yes, Trick I've heard. Yep.
Yes.
Trick?
Yes, I have a trick. I have a trick pedal.
I knew somebody had it.
I saw it and I loved it in the music store, but it was $430. And Trick Axis, there's another pedal called Axis. I think they're made in Florida. And now someone actually has a totally new technology. There's a pedal out that has no spring. It's using magnets, the repulsion of magnets. It must be completely frictionless because with magnetic motors, they're frictionless. I forget what this pedal is called. It's called a Magnatech or Magna something.
Interesting.
And it's not even that expensive. It's between $200 and $300. It's the same price as the top of the line Pearl Demon Drive or a DW 9000, any of the good pedals.
Right.
No one has it in the store.
I am such an old school guy when it comes to, I mean, I like a single chain. I know I have friends, like when I was studying with Bellucci, he would only play on a strap. He only had a leather strap pedal. That all his pedals are all leather strap. He will not play anything else. I know other guys that are direct drive guys. They only use the direct drive, and that's what
I want to try direct drive. The Jojo Mare pedal is a strap, and I got to try it once. It was pretty cool. It was good, but I want to try direct drive, and that's what the Axis is. And I want to try that magnetic pedal, but nobody seems to have it. It's not even that expensive. The Trick, the Axis, the DW 9000, the Pearl Demon Drive, they all cost a fortune.
Yes, I know.
And that's it. I'm going to let other people speak. I just sit back and listen and absorb some knowledge. Go ahead, guys.
Thanks for the insight. Graham, you got your hand raised.
Yeah, that reverse art is pretty good. I've actually used that one quite a bit, but I find the HD dries really dry it out a bit too much for my liking. I like a little bit of resonance for rim shots and stuff like that. But I just wanted to drop in just to let you know, even though we're talking about gear and it can be great to have the best things and save up for them, sometimes it's just about playing and not always about, spending. I mean, I've used the cheapest kits, then I bought this Gretsch monster here, and then I ended up realizing, I could have got away with buying less drums and then paying a little less, and I would have been better off probably for it. But at the same time, there are options out there. I mean, these third-party cymbal companies, they're producing them in pretty much, I think, the same factories they're producing the big names for, but they're just selling them really cheap. And I've played some of them. I've actually got one here from Fame, from Music Store in Cologne. It's their house brand. And if I was honest about it, if you could put a Milo logo on it, it would be a Milo. Right. So, just pick what sounds good to your ear. Just have fun with it.
I couldn't believe when I went to all the different cymbal companies like Errol and Soul Tone and Bosphorus and all these different companies that, were all putting out some really, what was the other one? Like UFIP or something like that was another brand.
Company. Yeah.
Everything was sounding really good. I love the Istanbul. Again, they're an older company, but like the Istanbul Mehmets were just unbelievable when the last time I was at NAMM. So it's like Zildjian and Sabian have a run for their money now with all these cymbals. And Meinl is just crushing it in Europe. I mean, everybody's playing Meinl right now. It's like the hot cymbal to be playing, So, and Dorothy, you play Peisty, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
but I had a gorgeous set of Meinl, and I was trying to get in with Meinl. Meinl is the only company that I ever tried to get endorsed by because I was already playing their gear.
Right.
And it didn't work out. And so when I got the Peisty, they came to me, and I always loved Peisty, but they were a little, expensive back when I worked in the music store, like in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And there were some favorites of mine that were Peisty. So when they came to me, they sent me, like the whole setup of Peisties, whatever I wanted. So I ended up selling my Meinls. And it was sad because I loved the Meinls.
I hear you. I've had a bunch of people ask me if I would sell them my Zildjians, and I'm like, I have like a whole like 2 or 3 cymbal bags full of Zildjian cymbals now, just sitting in the closet.
Yeah.
that I've been playing my whole life. Some of them, you know,
Yeah.
I have like this Dry Earth Ride that I played all through college. That still sounds amazing. But you know, there is something nice when you get a whole brand new set of cymbals, and it was the same thing. Sabian came to me, they reached out, so that was really, really cool. And I'd been talking to Zildjian for like 3 years. We've been going back and forth because I already work with Vic Firth, so the rep from Zildjian, we've been talking all through COVID. I was supposed to happen right before COVID. They were supposed to send me a contract, and then COVID hit, and everything kind of went to hell. And then we kind of lost touch because of COVID and everything that was going on. Then when we rekindled, it was so hard to get the back and forth. And it just never, like you said, never worked out. It just didn't materialize, you know, the way you want it to sometimes.
But I have a gorgeous set of Sabian HHX because the ride was practically new, and I have like a 19-inch Crash that's brand new, and the Dave Weckl 13-inch. So I have that set just in a bag. And then I have a whole complete set of Zildjian K Customs.
Oh, nice.
K Custom Darks and stuff. And I have a what would you say you were looking for? Constantinople.
Right.
Yeah, I have the 20-inch Constantinople. So I have those cymbals because I can't make myself get rid of them yet.
Oh, I hear you. You know what? Why should we? We shouldn't, you know.
They're my babies.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. It's like, you know what? I'll keep them in my studio, and they'll sit there, and they'll be kind of locked away.
Yeah.
Same thing with drums too. For a little while, I was technically endorsing Pearl drums. That was kind of like a weird situation that came up with that endorsement deal. It just wasn't a great deal. You know, and that kind of brings up that point of endorsements, because I know a couple of guys behind the scenes had asked me about that. But before we get into that, Glenn, you raised your hand. I just want to make sure I get to Glenn Hamilton.
Yeah. This is going funny again. Heads. I used Evans for quite a while, and then for some reason I started using Remo, and I'm a totally coated drumhead user. Don't like anything clear, and I use ambassadors on my snares and Emperor White Suede on my toms. And I found a wonderful cymbal company. They're made in China. It's called Syntent, and for the price, actually the price belies their value. They are so good and so reasonable to buy. And when you're a guy like me, not ever looking for a endorsement of any kind, you know, look around for what's good. Like you were saying, there's so many different cymbals made in certain factories, and there may be 4 different brands put on them. They're all made in the same place. But the other thing was foot pedals. I tried a lot of foot pedals, and I've been a direct drive user for ages. I found the Yamaha FP9.
Right. You were talking.
And that changed my life. That's how important that was. I don't know how many people like or use Yamaha. I was never impressed with them. One thing, I always thought they were way overpriced. Now most of my stands, most of my hardware is Yamaha, and I won't go back. I'd used Gibraltar for years. I'd used Mapex. I'd used Pearl. A couple others too, and nothing is better than Yamaha. Yamaha that's really dropped prices lately.
Yeah, because, you know, I don't associate Yamaha. I mean, with drums, their drums are amazing. I mean, guys like Gadd and Weckl and all those guys endorsed Yamaha for years, you know. But I never think about their hardware. Like, I never think about, you know, a bass drum pedal from Yamaha. You know, it just doesn't usually pop up in my head as being one of those main companies, you know.
Yeah, but they make their hardware in the same factory where they make the motorcycles.
Right. No, so there you go.
And it is top notch. Even I like to go for the lighter ones, like Single Brace, and their Crosstown lightweight hardware is excellent. The only weakness is the hi-hat. The spring is kind of weak and it isn't adjustable. But that was where I started with Yamaha hardware, and started adding other things to it. Now I got a whole bunch of Gibraltar hardware that I should get rid of, but like cymbals. I got a great set of Bosphorus cymbals too that I can't let go of. I just can't do it.
same thing. It's the same thing, you know. Other Glenn, what do you got?
Yeah. All right. First to Glenn. I agree with you. I never wanted Yamaha. I wound up with a great Yamaha kit. It was a fantastic price. I'm using Yamaha Maple Custom Absolute Series. And the hardware is fantastic. I got a Tama hi-hat stand, but that's beside the point. And a Tama foot pedal. I had a Pearl Eliminator. It got everything. I lost a lot of gear in Hurricane Sandy back like 10, 12 years ago, whenever that was. And I had to replace a lot of equipment. And Jay, as you know, I'm in New York City, so I'm dealing with places like the Guitar Center and Sam's Ass. I hate them all. I want to ask you guys what you think, all of you, Dorothea, Jay, everybody. There's 2 new top of the line kits on the market. And now I'm thinking one of them is not new at all, and it's been around for decades. It's just that only the pros were getting it. Everybody where I am, thinks DW is the greatest. But Yamaha now has a line out called PHX, the Phoenix series. And they are very exorbitantly priced. And not to be outdone, Tama came out with a new top of the line called Tama Star.
Okay.
And these shells are available in all maple or what they call hybrid. The plies are different hardwoods layered together.
Right.
How many of you have heard of this Yamaha Phoenix and Tama Star drums, and what do you think of them?
I mean, the last line of Tama that I remember is the Star Classic was that at one point was their top. So I'm not really up on it, to be honest. I do know a lot.
Yeah, now Star is their top, and I don't know. I saw a recent video with Simon Phillips, and he's using the Tama Star. You could recognize them because they got a little stripe going around the center of the shell,
right?
And some kind of emblem on them. And they're a little less expensive than Yamaha Phoenix, but both of these kits are both significantly more expensive than, let's say, DW Collector's Series, which is a top-of-the-line kit. This Tama Star, more than DW. Yamaha Phoenix, more than DW and more than Tama.
I'm willing to bet a hybrid. I'm willing to bet, like I said, it's all about the wood. So when it comes down to how expensive the drums are, it's the shell. Like, for example, Pearl has their the reference kits, which is all hybrid kits. So like when you get, it's like African mahogany on the lower ones, and it's like birch and maple combination for the higher. And the whole kit the wood is tuned to the size of the drum. And it makes the kit sound amazing. I mean, I remember when that reference kit first came out, I got to play one, and the kit sounded mic'd without being mic'd. It was tuned great, but like, it was just an amazing kit.
What Yamaha did with the Phoenix, first of all, they said they based the design on the Maple Absolute, so their top of the line drum is based on what I already have. But what they did was they took the hardest wood, is some kind of Malaysian hardwood. I forget the name. Might be called Kapur, Kapur, Kapur wood. Anyway, they put the hardest one in the center. And they put 2 layers, 2 plies of another less harder one, and then 2 plies of the outer 2 are maple. So the toms are 5 plies thick. The hardest one in the center, which they claim when you hit the drum, it gets excited the most. And then that excitement spreads to the other plies. And the 2 outer maple, one on the inside of the shell, one on the outside, it's the least hard of these 3 woods. And that's what they claim gives, this is like their new great sound. 3 different woods composing 5 plies, with the hardest one being the middle or the starting ply, let's say. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And this goes back to kind of what Graham was talking about before. I know Graham's got his hand up too. He was saying something along the lines of, at what point does it get ridiculous with like, all these different kinds of plies? And at the end of the day, you put a mic on it. It really depends on the situation. If you're just like practicing in your practice room, if you're playing live, if you're a session cat, that's when that stuff is going to make somewhat of a difference. But if you watched my lesson where I talked about the tuning, I mean, I've done sessions with garbage kits that these people like Frankenstein kits. Most of the best studios I've been to, it's been like the bass drum's from this kit, the rack tom is from this kit from like 30 years ago. The floor tom was like an old studio kit that he found somewhere in some hole in the wall rehearsal studio, but he loves it. And the snare drum is like an old, steel Ludwig, from like the 60s. And the kit would sound amazing because it was just tuned right. It was in the right room, and it had nothing to do. Like, you never see those kits in some of these big studios that I've recorded in. Very rarely has it been like, oh, look, they have the new DW, blah, 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 or the new, it's like, that's great for live. That's great for, like, again, the endorsing artist. That's like, I'm playing these beautiful drums, and it kind of showcases the drums to everybody. But at the end of the day, I mean, what matters more is how you play them and and how you tune them. So it's easy to fall into that spell of like, I need this perfect wood and these combinations. Does it make a difference? I don't know enough about drum making to know if it makes a difference. I'd have to literally sit down and hear the drums next to each other. And then there's so many other factors: how it's tuned, who tuned it, what kind of heads on it, how old are the heads, what room are you in? There's so many factors that it's hard to tell, an apple to apple comparison of those two kinds of drum sets. Guess, right? Graham,
Yeah, I'm hanging on to the Yamaha, the Maple Absolute. They sound great. You could walk away from them for years, come back, and they'll still be in tune. They never go out of tune, and the hardware is good.
Right.
I have no complaint about them.
It's funny you say that, because I have these GMS drums, and I love the drums. I've had them since 1995. Okay, they're all maple drums, beautiful. They're Keller wood, and you were asking about all those different brands. And when I was buying drums in the 90s, everybody was using Keller. I don't know if that's still the case. If everyone is that the case, Andy might know that, or Glenn up there. Is everyone still using Keller shells? I know that was like what everybody was using.
Yamaha and Pearl are not.
They're not anymore. Okay.
Generally, no. And as far as these hybrid, I've got a 1982 Yamaha Tour in mahogany birch. That kind of thing has been around for a long time.
Oh yeah, totally. Exactly. But I think they're charging more because they're doing all these tests with the different kinds of plies and putting them together. And, how much of it is marketing and how much of it really makes a difference, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, and I haven't played enough of them to really tell, if that makes a difference. Dorothea, you might know more than me as far as that kind of stuff. Which drums might be better in terms of, for me, I feel like nicer drums are easier to tune. Could be because the bearing edge is really good, or they're nice and they're cut really straight. But
I agree with that.
Right. That's my big takeaway,
because working in the music store all those years, I had to tune them. I had to take them out of the box, put them together, and tune them. And oh my gosh, I especially remember the 12, 13, 16 kits. Oh, that 13 was like a nightmare. Oh, I hated that stupid 13. But, I would try my best to get them where they sounded good, and I would set them up perfectly so that when people came in, they could play them to get an idea of what they were supposed to sound like before they purchased them. But then when we got, when we had Dave Weckel's Yamaha kit in, because he did a clinic one time. And when we did get DW kits in and things like that, oh my gosh, they were just so sweet. It didn't take that much to get them in perfect tune. And I tuned them to the shell.
Right.
I tune them to what sounds, what that shell really needs, the resonance of that shell. And they were just always easier. But I haven't been in a music store as far as working and stuff for, several years. So I don't know. I can't speak of.
Do you have a specific method? Like, again, I don't know if you watched my lesson. I think you did.
I did.
A comment on it. So, I mean, I've always tuned it. I forget which teacher once kind of showed me that whole thing about finding the shape and making sure the head is seated. Yeah. That's always worked for me. But every time I see somebody talk about tuning, they do it a different way. So it's like,
no, I do it very similar.
Okay.
By, going this way and here.
Right. And kind of doing a star pattern.
And then just to tweak it, I can go like an eighth of a turn, around all the way around if I want to, instead of going, across after you've already got it. And then you seat it and then, go back and fine tune it.
Absolutely. But I also find that too. I found that odd shaped toms, like odd, weird depth versus diameter, they're very tough to. The easiest ones are the ones that are the same. If you have a 10 by 10, a 14 by 14, those always, for some reason, do the best. And I can't stand really deep toms, so I like a shallow tom. So if you get like a 10 by 8, but it's a pain in the neck to tune because they're not the same dimensions.
Yeah.
So I hear that. Andy, what do you got? You got your hand up.
Yeah, Frank Bellucci just recorded a whole bunch of content with friends out in Vancouver. And he basically brought along about 5 separate clips of, Frank's life on Long Island, what it's like for him. You go from this gig to this gig to this gig, and you're playing on a stage the size of a postage stamp. You're in the corner, and your setup has to be very minimal. And there are times when he's had to improvise where he forgot his cymbals. So he's playing on serving trays, or he's playing on, so basically what Kyle and company did to Frank for this, at least for that free content, was they had surprise setups. He's playing an ironing board. He's playing a suitcase kick drum. And he was just recounting all the different instances where he really had to just put, there's one where he's playing a louver closet door. So he's just using that as a washboard sound. But he did have an interesting point about the studio, and that is, if you think about it, the studio is pure audio. You don't see what's going on. You don't, like filmmaking, where everything outside of that frame is all gaffer tape and blankets and if you've ever seen how a movie set looks versus the way it appears on your screen, that's kind of the way the studio is versus the final product. You don't necessarily know what type of equipment that they used. You think, oh, wow, that drum sound. No, he was playing a garbage can in a hallway, in a stairwell, or even if you go back to the 50s, Buddy Holly and the Crickets, you got Jerry Sullivan basically tapping his thighs, or the Beatles where Ringo is playing, a tea chest. All of these different things. So at the end of the day, we, as human beings, we've been making sounds since we've been able to have that capability. And it gets a little bit esoteric when you really get into the fine point. Yes, it's beautiful. If I listen to Russ Kunkel, the way he hits the toms and the way the sound that comes out of those drums, yeah, it hits the pleasure center of the brain. It's beautiful. For me, I came to drums in my 60s. So I'm playing an $800 Gretsch Catalina kit with Remo silent stroke heads, the mesh heads, and Zildjian low volume cymbals. My one extravagance is the trick pedal and the EMAD beater head on the kick drum with about a week's worth of laundry stuffed inside. But I've been, just as a final aside, I've been recording. In order for me to get world-class drum sounds, I'm playing the electronic kit into the box and triggering Superior Drummer, and letting George Massenberg's recording work for my limited skills.
I know a lot of guys that do that. I know a lot of guys that session cats that are like make all their living doing sessions. I had a friend of mine, I won't name names because we are kind of public here. And I wouldn't want to blow up his spot or anything, but he admitted to me once that, he's got the studio with the whole setup and he was doing sessions for years. He ended up getting that rolling kit and Superior Drummer. And he was like, Jay, for the past year, every single one of my sessions, I've been using the rolling kit and Superior Drummer because I don't have to tune anything. And then the tracks I send are flawless. And the people are like, your drum sounds are amazing. And he's like, and I just kind of tweak Superior Drummer and they just sound amazing. And I could knock out a session so fast because I don't have to worry about setting up and miking and getting sounds, or, the microphone's shifting a little bit. And now the heads are a little off now. So now I get new heads. He's like, I don't deal with any of that. I just go in and I record it on the electric kit. And they have no idea. So listen, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, going that route. Floyd, what do you got? You got your hand up.
Yeah, hey again. Jay, I was just wondering if you could run through your app a little bit and how
Sure.
that works, because I've just been following you about 6 months on Instagram and then
Right.
just watched your recent workshop videos. And I really like what I see. I'm taking drum lessons at the moment. I'm just wondering how much time like to dedicate to your app and the cost of it.
Sure. Well, so the app is, first of all, it's a great supplement to drum lessons. I don't really think that there's any great replacement online for drum lessons. I think a one-on-one lesson is the best thing you could possibly do, especially if you have a great teacher. My app focuses, it has a learning aspect for sure, but the main focus is practice. Where I've found a lot of systems kind of fall short, including private lessons, is I would send my students home and tell them to practice, give them a whole routine. They'd come in a week later unprepared. And the main reason was I just didn't know what to do. When I'm with you, it was great. The second I got home, I couldn't remember how to do it. It doesn't feel right. Then I wasn't doing it. And I wasn't doing it right. One of my students said to me years back, he said, I wish I could just take you home with me every single day. That was his wish. He's like, just come home with me every day and just practice with me for an hour. So that got me thinking, and I just started recording my practice sessions. And then I eventually put it up on a website. This is like real makeshift, like 2012, and my students started logging in and we started practicing together every day. And that kind of turned into what the app is now. It's kind of ballooned out and grown into this monster of like practice routines. So it's more akin to like a gym app, like a Beachbody, where you put it on and you go through the routines. Again, the whole premise is learn it, practice it, apply it. That's kind of like the path inside of my app. The guys actually up here, Angelo and Andy and Glenn and Graham, they've been in it for a long time. I mean, Angelo, if you talk to him, he's in it every day, working in it and doing his routines. If you stick to it, the whole key is just getting that maintenance work. My whole philosophy with practicing stuff like stick control, it's super important. Most drummers don't do it. They don't do it enough. They don't do it right. They don't stick to it long enough. They don't push themselves hard enough. And those things consistently are the things that kind of move the big blocks. So this app does stuff like that, where it's like you sit there and I'll sit with you on stick control at multiple different tempos. And we do each exercise holding it for a minute, different volumes. And we just hold it and we ingrain it, and you just nurture the habit of doing it every single day. There's like 15 courses up on the app, all different topics. Stick control, there's a speed course, rhythm, accents, and sticking. If you're following the mentorship, are the first 3 courses that I go through. Rhythm course is all about the rhythm chart, getting in and out of those rhythms in every single way, shape, or form possible. Accents deal with formal and informal strokes, so molar versus like the marching style. And again, going through all those positions and ironing them out. You got to know them like you know your name. Sticking focuses mostly on stick control, which is kind of the opposite of what sticking does, because sticking is kind of is supposed to get you around the kit easier. Stick control makes it convoluted on purpose to develop those transitions between the feelings of sticking. And again, all that stuff I go into in the lesson end of it, where we talk about, the terminology and how all that stuff works. In addition to all those practice routines, I just introduced the practice plans. So now we have like 3-week cycles where I tell you what to do every single day. So Monday, you do these 3 routines. Tuesday, you do these 3. Wednesday, you do these 3. And depending on your concentration, if you're concentrating on just a little bit of everything, there's a 3-week cycle. If you're concentrating on rhythm, there's a 3-week cycle. If you're doing chop builder, there's a 3-week cycle dedicated to that. So I'm trying my best to make it as easy as possible for the student to log in and practice. That's my goal. That's really my outcome with the app. On top of that, I have my mentorship coming out. The mentorship is a little bit more in line with private lessons, but with a group. So that's going to be a little bit more expensive when that comes out. And I'm going to talk about that in the next lesson. I'm going to outline all that stuff that I have coming up. But we just finished the first round of mentorship around Christmas. Was it around Christmas time? January? I think we finished up the first round of mentorship. And that is a little bit more intense, where it's more about lessons and then works with the app. So there's a path inside the mentorship that goes through a 10-week cycle. And then I have assignments at the end of each lesson that puts the drummers into the app, and they really hyper focuses them on each topic and gets them, up to a certain level with it. It's hard. It's grueling. It's not, and to my detriment, it's not like, oh, they're just going to play songs and have fun. It's work, in my app. It's kind of like if you ever watched the P90X commercial where he says, this sucks. You probably can't do this, but if you do it, holy crap, you get huge. That's kind of what my app is like. It's hard work. It's a pain in the ass, but if you could get in there and you work with me and do the routines, it'll build you up. I don't know. Any of you guys, Angelo, Andy, Glenn, you have anything you want to add? Because you guys are in there doing it every day.
Well, the thing is, you get out of it what you put into it. For instance, if you're talking about speed, I'm typically at the lower end of the speed spectrum, but it does warm the hands up. I do it in conjunction with a bunch of different things. Because again, I'm lucky enough to have the private lessons. I would describe, and you had it accurately, Jay. I call it weightlifting for drums. You don't have to be bench pressing 500 pounds when you go to the gym. You can keep your muscles in shape doing what you can do. So it's not like you're going to, really hurt yourself trying to do this. You can have a very, very good workout and you just keep pushing it. You just keep pushing the envelope, and then you kind of get there eventually. It takes a little bit longer at my age, but I see measurable improvement, especially now I'm recording a bunch of stuff, recording a bunch of instruments. I'm putting together backing tracks so I could do solo acoustic guitar in our little community here. So it's forcing me to get on the kit, to get on the keys, to get on all the different instruments and pushing out in different areas. And your app is just like, as you say, nurture the habit. It's just something that you can, if you can look at those practice plans and you say, okay, I want to be able to get better at accents. I want to be able to execute the accents cleanly. You have the unit with the lessons that you go through the lessons, and then you have the practice plans where if the concentration is on accents, now you have a concentration there with all the other stuff integrated in there so that you're not just doing that. So it's a worthwhile endeavor, and it's a 3-week cycle with the practices. So at the end of 3 weeks, you say, oh, that was pretty good. Let me do a different one now. Let me do coordination. And then you go through 3 weeks of coordination. Or let me just keep it general. So it's a little bit of everything, 3 weeks of that. And it doesn't take up that much of your time so you can't, throw up some songs and then just play along and have fun. You will improve. Your hands and your feet will improve. And I found it to be a worthwhile thing. The guy, the expert here with the app would be Angelo. Angelo, I give it to you.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because the whole thing with these type of exercises is I don't want to be practicing stick control for 5 hours. Okay. That's not a flex when people are like, oh, I practice stick control for 5 hours. That just tells me that you're practicing stick control badly if you're doing it for that long. If you do stick control in a focused way, it should take you like 12 minutes to get through it, but the trick is being focused. Most people, when they go through it, they lose focus, or they don't get through it, or they don't hold it long enough. They don't have a routine. The goal, again, of this app is to make the routine simple. You just follow me. You follow me and you keep up best you can. You record your results, and you do it every day. You nurture the habit. You don't worry necessarily about the goal. You just keep doing it every single day and push yourself. Angelo, yeah, go ahead. And then Glenn, I see your hand up too.
I've just invited Floyd over to my place. He doesn't live far away, about half an hour away. So he's going to pop. He's going to. So he might pop over at some stage, and I can show him the app, and we can do a bit of practice together. It'd be great.
That would be great. Oh man, imagine you guys could get into like a practice routine together. You just got to get him up.
I like someone to talk to apart from you, Jay, every morning.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That is phenomenal. What are the odds of that you got two guys in Melbourne that live like right there? That's hysterical. Yeah. But Floyd, if you want somebody to take you on a tour of the app, Angelo knows the app inside and out. He probably knows it better than I do, and I built it, so he's just in there doing it every single day. Glenn, what do you got? Glenn Hamilton. Then we'll do Glenn, the other Glenn.
Yeah. Okay. Since you're all talking about sticking and
Sorry, Glenn.
practicing hand development, speed. I never worried about speed. Oh, this is beside the point. I'm still looking for that so-called free stroke in the Moeller technique, but forget about that. Jay, I mentioned to you that I'm playing for a long time, 25, 30 years, and I've barely ever used a metronome. All right. For a guy with no metronome, I'll be very specific now. I remember the first video I saw of you, your shorts channel, that made me subscribe to you. It was called The Table of Time as a Beat or as a groove. And you went through the whole table of time, odd note groups and all. And kick and snare was just going, boom, ba, boom, ba. Everything was note groups on the hands. So I decided to start practicing that. And I turned on a metronome app on my phone that I had never used. Now for 30-second notes, I'm doing a paradiddle, diddle, diddle, right? A group of 8.
Sure.
And you get 4 of them will make a bar. And I noticed I can do them at 90 BPM. And as soon as I go to 100, just 10 beats more per minute, 10 or 100, I cannot do them. How do I crack that ceiling? How do I crack? What can I do to crack that nut?
What's amazing right there is that is that you have, just like going to the gym. If anyone's any experience going to the gym, every gym rat that lifts knows that weight. They know what dumbbell that they'll pick up. That's when they're going to fail. They're going to fail when they pick up this weight. For a drummer, it's so important to know that for every exercise, especially stick control. My stick control book used to be riddled with BPMs next to each one, where this one, the break is at this tempo. This one, the break is at this one. And number 9 on every page would always be like the one, because it was all those lefts where I was like, man, this one sucks compared to everything else. But it's knowing that break and pushing, knocking on that ceiling. So the fact that you know it, the way to get over that is to knock on the ceiling. Unfortunately, you're going to not necessarily sound great knocking on the ceiling. There's going to be tension. The goal is always to try to not play with tension, but sometimes when you're pushing your muscles are tense. That's what tension is. Tension is your muscles are not strong enough to go that fast. So they tighten, and they tighten things that shouldn't tighten. And that's where all the tension comes from. But as those muscles develop and they get stronger, that tension will get less and less. And you got to keep knocking on that ceiling, even if it's just pushing it 1 degree and then holding it. So the trick is holding it. It's not so much going faster, it's holding it. Just how long can you hold it at 90? Can you only do it for 4 beats? Can you hold it for a solid minute? Know that time. Okay. If it's like 36 seconds, next time you do it, go for 40 seconds and write that down. Keep track. Because keeping track, the numbers, it's funny with speed and endurance. Numbers go up and they go down, depending on how you feel that day. Depending on what you ate, depending on how well you slept. Sometimes I'll do that endurance chart on the speed course and I'll be flying. I'll be like, oh man, I sound great today. The next day, it's all gone. And I don't know what happened. I'm like, all of a sudden I can't do anything. But you write those numbers down, and it's an up and down, but it's an overarching up over time if you do it consistently. And that's what you start to find. And the more you do it, the more that stuff just, you create this like foundation. And that's, you see these guys out there that could just pick up the sticks and they just fly around. That's foundation. That's when I remember talking to Steve Smith when he opened for Bellucci, and I got to hang with them a little bit because I was like Bellucci's roadie, and Smith said to me, he's like, I do stick control every day. I still do it every day. I wake up, I pick a page, I set the metronome to whatever the highest thing I could do it at, and I go through stick control, and it takes me about half hour because there's 24 on a page, so I do each one for a minute or 20 times, whatever he's doing. He's like, but I do that every single day. That's like not a non option to not get that done every single day. And that's why Smith, when he sits down, he sounds like that because it's that consistency of doing it all the time.
Steve Smith has incredible hands. I agree with you. Yeah.
Incredible hands, without a doubt. The other Glenn Hamilton.
Yeah, I think my mic's on.
Yeah, mic is on.
Okay. My biggest problem in getting any better at all than a mediocre intermediate level was I didn't know how to practice. I would sit down and try to do this and do that, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I took lessons for 3 years back when I was 12, 13, 14, and I'm 70 years old now, and 30 years not playing after that, and coming back to it, not making any progress whatsoever until I started with TDA, and I made more progress in the last 3 years than I made in all those years before. It's because Jay teaches how to practice. You sit down, there's no guesswork. You want to work on something, he's got it all laid out for you. You can sit down and you can find what you need, and you start going at it. And oh boy, first you start out at 50 beats per minute and it sucks. And then you get to where you do 50 beats per minute really well. And then you go to 60 or 75. And first time you move up to 75, you're going, oh, this is terrible. It's terrible. But you keep doing it. And the more you do it, the better you get. And you look for 100 and going much past 100 or 110 is just, for me, it's not there. Keep working at it, but it's not there. I can do very simple things at 110, 120, but I can't do anything complicated up there.
Yeah, but again, you know that number. I love the fact that you know the number, and that's what's cool with the guys that can turn around and tell you this is the number that I feel. You know, I mean, that's huge, right off the bat. That tells me that you're doing it all the time. When you start knowing those numbers, you start knowing, oh man, here it comes at this tempo, this exercise. Ugh, this is the killer for me. You know, that's amazing, Glenn.
Yeah, and the other thing is I can't do French grip worth crap. I've never been able to do things with my fingers very well. But if you really want to get good on cymbals, you got to do something with French grip. And that's where I'm working on push-pull method, and I'm going to go after that, work on pull-outs. It's a matter of sharpening your skills through repetition.
Right.
There's no other way to do it. You're either going to be dedicated and willing to put in the time and the work that it takes, or put your sticks away and forget it.
And the trick is, again, to get this stuff done, because this is not the fun stuff. The fun stuff is playing the song. The fun stuff is doing the stuff that Andy was talking about. So, but you want to get the maintenance done. You want to be in the habit of doing the maintenance work, getting that stuff done, then going to the song, then going to the licks thing that you're trying to work out, or, it's getting to the habit of doing the important stuff first. The stuff that's really going to move the blocks, that's really going to improve your playing. Then you'll find doing the other stuff, like learning the songs, will be so much easier because the technique is a non-issue.
I don't waste my time on doing the things I'm good at.
Good, yeah.
I do that when I'm playing with the band in rehearsal or playing in church.
Yeah.
When I'm practicing, I try to do things that I'm terrible at, because that's how I'll get better.
That's the way. That's the way. Just like they say in The Mandalorian, this is the way. Matthew Minicozy, you got your hand up, and then we'll go to you, Graham.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, so cool. Yeah, it's not that loud, but I was gonna say that before the app and the website existed, I was just like a little kid, so I didn't really care about the stick control book. But I guess one of your tricks was you'd give me candy to like work on it, and then if I like figured out the exercise the next week, I'd get a Snickers, and I didn't really have that much candy back then, so that was some good motivation. And then also with, I guess, making it fun, like I guess now with recording, that really helps me, because I can try and hear like how it sounds, and the mic picks up all the errors, and then it's different, because I wouldn't notice that if I just played it live.
Right.
And then that would be like another tool.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Graham, what do you got?
My microphone on, that'll help. Yeah, I just wanted to say, for anyone that's out there contemplating getting the app, as someone who's practiced quite a lot with the app, more so recently, and not as good as Angelo, of course. Like, that's not happened. That's my goal, is to at some point be that frequent. But the reason I recommend the app personally is because I've played a lot of stuff, but this is one of those with these stick control exercises where you're playing like the singles, like the rolls, the sprints, and stuff like that. You're playing through it and you think, I've got this, and then you're playing it like 50 and stuff like that, and 75, and then all of a sudden it's just like it throws you under the bus. All of a sudden your hands are not doing what they're supposed to. And I'm like, I should be able to do this. Why can't I do this? Yeah, like I've done loads of exercises, but it's the combinations. Like you split the exercises into different. We're always playing 4 and 4 and 4, but you're splitting them up into 2s, and sometimes then you split them up over longer periods and stuff, and that just keeps you guessing, which is a really good thing. All the way through the apps, I'm starting to get into this kind of like doing what I'm not used to doing, and that's it's getting interesting in the app, definitely. So
You think
I
that's
recommend it. Yeah.
Try playing with your 10-year younger self and not being able to keep up with him. I've done that where I'm like, this guy's 10 years younger than me and it's me and I can't keep up with him. What the hell's going on right now? Dorothea, what are your views on stick control? Because from another
My picture, can you hear me? My picture is frozen.
I know we see you. You're still there.
Okay. It's like frozen.
Oh, okay.
I was just gonna stress stick control and accents and rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get to accents and rebounds, you really need to have stick control under your belt first, and then you go to accents and rebounds and figure out how to apply and make them just more, audible to the listener. When you're playing just everything at one volume, it just doesn't sound as good. But by the time you get to accents and rebounds, it's just both of these books just work hand in hand, and they're the best.
Yeah. Well, George Lawrence Stone is the reason why I say informal and not Moeller. Everyone talks about Moeller, but George Lawrence Stone had his own version, and he was like they were in the same peer group, Stone and Moeller, and they were kind of like,
yeah.
But he also has a whip motion that he taught Morello teaches, but Morello doesn't call it Moeller, because he didn't study with Moeller. So he called it a whip stroke. And it was actually Don Famularo, when I took a lesson with him, that first introduced me to that terminology of formal and informal. And when he said that to me, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like that's the way, that's what it should be called. Nothing against, the Moeller or anything like that. But, and I think every teacher deserves his credit. But George Lawrence Stone, wrote the Bible with those two books.
I'll call this the Bible, or like the book of ABCs.
Yep.
To learn your ABCs when you're in 4-year-old kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know your ABCs, you're never going to be able to read.
Exactly.
If you don't know and can't play these things in stick control, then you're not going to be able to put it and apply it on the kit.
That's it.
That's what every drummer, every pro drummer that you're seeing and you're admiring, they're using those multiple stickings, inverted paradiddles, triple paradiddles, and single flam mills and things like that around the kit, because they got it from a book like Stick Control, or basically Stick Control. And that's your foundation.
We talk about that in my app. The guys are talking about the sticking course that I have in my app is a rip off of Stick Control. I mean, I ripped it off. It's not even like it's egregious. Like I literally took exercises right out of there because they're perfect.
I use it every day.
Right.
Every day with my students.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to have to run, but I have enjoyed it.
We are getting to that point because we're supposed to stop at 8, but I'll take one more question before we wrap it up.
Okay.
Who else has got something that they want to ask before we, and we didn't get really into the endorsement conversation, so we'll have to for another time, but Glenn Dollick, what do you got, buddy? Oh, you're muted. Unmute. You need to unmute your mic, Glenn. We can't hear you.
This question actually is for Dorothea. Dorothea, okay. You could hear me, right?
Yes.
You mentioned, I'm sure Dave Weckl gave a lot of clinics in a lot of music stores, but you mentioned you were working in a music store when a drum kit came in for him. That music store didn't happen to be in Sacramento, California, was it?
No, it was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I have to brag on myself because I had been listening to Dave and all of his recordings and everything. When the kit came in, it was a beautiful, like aqua green. And I think it had 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And I tuned it like I had heard on his recordings. I had everything tuned. And when he came in, he came in, you know, with his key. And he sat down and he's like, who tuned this kit? He didn't have to touch it. And I was like, yes.
Wow. Because he is manic.
Great.
Yeah, he is manic about his sounds. So that is a thing in the cap.
He didn't have to tune it. I had it perfect.
No, that's awesome. That's
Very good.
yeah.
All right, I was just wondering. I heard a story about a kit that came into Sacramento for him, and then the drum store put it out for 20 years as a rental kit, and now it belongs to someone. Some guy, a Sacramento musician, bought it. Jay, one last thing for you.
Sure.
I mentioned to you that I'm in New York City at the ocean, at the beach.
Okay.
And when notifications for this to sign up were coming in, I don't know. I thought for some reason that you're living in Georgia.
I was living in Georgia. I moved about a year ago. Some of my emails might still be pointing to Georgia. I don't know why that's happening. But yeah,
it says Loganville, Georgia.
Yeah, that was my last address before I moved back up here to Baltimore. But I'm from New York. I'm from Long Island.
Oh, you're in Maryland. That's what I want to ask. You named. I'm thinking that you must have spent an inordinate amount of time on Long Island. Long Island is next door to me. I'm in Queens.
Of course.
And you're naming Frank Bellucci. You're naming Dom Famularo. And these are all guys I've met. Never took lessons from any of them. I was lucky enough to get to meet and briefly hang out with them. I thought that was pretty cool. And then on the Manhattan side, I've met and hung out with Kim Plainfield and Mike Clark and Kenwood Denard and, you know, all of that. And I was lucky enough to hang out with Rod Morgenstein for 4 lessons. They weren't lessons. I just wanted to hang out with Rod. And that's exactly what I got to do. Hang out with Rod and 2 drum sets.
When I was in East Northport, he lived like a couple of miles away from where my apartment was, and I used to go out and see him all the time. And we'd go out to like the Nutty Irishman down in you know, and it's like he lived right there. You know, he used to commute up to Berkeley. I don't know if he still does it because he was.
I don't think he's teaching at Berkeley anymore, but
yeah.
He's from Plainview, Long Island, and you named all of these guys that I've encountered over the years, going to clinics, going to shows, guys I've like gotten to know.
Yeah.
And I said, man, for someone who lives in Georgia, how are you on Long Island so much? Now I understand.
Levittown, born and raised. I lived there my whole life. And then I've lived all over the island, you know, when in my early 20s, yeah. Patchogue, Massapequa, I lived in for a long time. Then I went to school upstate at Purchase, you know, I was SUNY Purchase, which is like White Plains, New York, Yonkers, like that area. Studied with all the cats in Manhattan. So I was in Manhattan every weekend, you know, playing and gigging and sitting in and doing all that stuff. And all my friends are still there. So, but yeah, so New York, representing New York. All right, guys, I'm going to call it for today. We got one more lesson. Those of you on Instagram, thanks for watching me. If you want to join the workshop, you could still get it through the link in my profile. So go ahead and do that, get all the lessons, and yeah, we'll take it from there. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. And thanks to Dorothea Taylor. I know she had to leave, but Carrie, we didn't get to say hi to you. So I'm saying hi to you now. How are you? I just saw you pop in. But okay, guys, have a great night, and I will see you in a couple of days.
Thank you, Jay.
Got it.